The book that my wife and I use when we teach all over the place is Insights in Leadership. I just think that's just a fabulous book. And the reason we love it so is it applies servant leadership to all kinds of organizations, profit, nonprofit, and all. It also has a very powerful article about followership, and what's the role of the follower. As I said, if we both leader and follower have a servant heart, then, something's going to happen. But if the follower is just waiting around for the leader to do everything, that's not, coming from a servant heart. And I think the servant leader's going to get a little impatient with that. And so what I really like is that servant leadership isn't, some people think servant leadership's for the church, or it's for this and that. No, it's for all organizations, because, as I said, it's both vision and direction and implementation. And I'll just tell you an interesting study. My son, Scott, and Drea Zagarmi, who heads up our research in our company, they did a study, and they call it the Leadership Profit Chain. They reviewed 200 studies of leadership and its relationship to what they call organizational vitality or success. And they wanted to see what is the relationship between leadership and organizational vitality and success. And they took into consideration employee passion and customer loyalty. And they looked at two parts of leadership. One was strategic leadership, which to me is the leadership part of servant leadership, which is vision and direction and values and all. And then the second is operational leadership, which is a servant part of servant leadership. Very interestingly, they found only an indirect relationship between strategic leadership and organizational vitality and success. And yet we pay big bucks to these presidents and all because they're great strategic leaders. What they found was the reason why it's an indirect relationship is that your people and your customers, they don't know what the strategy is. They don't know where you're heading. All they know is how they're treated by the leaders throughout the organization. See, and a servant leader wants to build leadership capacity throughout the organization. And that if you have an organization where the vision and values and the direction are clear, and then the philosophy is to turn the pyramid upside down and now empower all the frontline people and the supervisors and the middle managers and all to make it happen, then all of a sudden what they start to do is empower their people. What happens when people are getting appreciated and empowered? They get passionate about their work. And what are passionate people at work do? They go out of their way to serve customers. And then they make the customers loyal. The customers start bragging on them, which reinforces them. And it's this interaction between passionate employees and loyal customers that really has the biggest impact on organizational vitality. And it's driven by operational leadership, by the servant part of servant leadership. Now, I don't want to say that strategic leadership isn't important, because it is, but it only accounts for 10 to 15% of the impact on performance. It's really interesting. The traditional people that applied Skinnerian psychology to organizations talk about the ABCs of performance. A stands for activator, which is something happens before people can perform. That's goal setting, training, all kinds of things that you can do, establishing values and visions and all. And then B is behavior. People start now to do things. And C is consequences, which is what happens after people start to do things. And you ask people, what is the biggest impact on performance? What we call activators, which start the thing, or consequences. And a lot of people say, well, it's got to be goal setting, it's got to be, no. 10 to 15% of the impact on performance comes from activators, antecedents, that 85 to 90% comes from what happens after people start to perform. That behavior is controlled by its consequences, and it's the praising progress and the redirection and all of those kinds of things that are done, if they're done from a servant heart, to just drive the organization. And so my whole goal is to say to people, servant leadership is not, about the inmates running the prison. It's not about pleasing people. It's not some religious movement. It's the only kind of leadership that makes sense, that takes into consideration, in Jim Collins's word, both people and results. It's not either or, it's both and that's where the action is.